So thanks again for joining me. Let's just kind of get right into it. So how did you get started in golf, and what are some of your earliest memories within the game?
Well, that's one of my favorite stories. My husband and I were both athletes growing up. And after I had my daughter, our second child, he went out and played golf with some buddies of his. He didn't have clubs or shoes, he borrowed everything. And he enjoyed it so much. He came home and it was like the next day, it was a beautiful day in May. And he said, I'm going to go hit some golf balls at that driving range. It's a beautiful day. Why don't you bring the baby and come along? So I did. It was, a nice day. I got a 2-month-old. Sure, let me get out and get some fresh air. And sitting there on the bench watching him hit balls, it was a magnificent experience. You know what I mean? And then before he finished his bucket of balls, he had maybe 10 or so golf balls left. He said to me, hey, you want to give it a try? I'll hold the baby. Come on. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And I got up and, took some swings, and out of those 10 or so balls, I think maybe I hit 2 good ones, but I was hooked. I was hooked. And I had us signed up to take lessons 2 days later.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So since that day and since kind of beginning this career that you've built in this game, what are some of your favorite experiences? I mean, obviously you have a very memorable start. Over the years, what are some of your favorite memories?
Well, when I read the questions and thought about it, it really goes back to friends and family, probably more so than anything. With the kids growing up, my son and daughter are 11 years apart. And by the time my daughter was old enough to play, we were so busy with my son, with his high school games and, my husband's career and just all the stuff. So the times that I found to be most gratifying was when we were out playing as a family. So that was wonderful. And then the times I had my daughter and her little buddy out, and they're 7 years old and they're skipping down the fairway and stopping to pick flowers. And I'm saying, no, don't pick those. They don't want you to pick those, and then they're stopping to throw things in the pond. Those memories are, just priceless. And my son growing up was always my favorite golfing partner because my daughter and my husband did horses. Mm-hmm. And my son and I would go out and play golf. And as a mom of a boy, when he was, 13, 14, 15 years old, what do mothers do with their sons, right? The daughter, you can go get your nails done, all this stuff. But with your son, what do? Well, my son and I always had golf, and then we would spend that time together having lunch or, whatever. So again, priceless.
You obviously have all of these positive experiences with the game. Who really inspired you to seek out becoming a teaching professional? What was that path to that like? And then how did you go from, okay, I want to teach, I want to be this, but I also want to be a Class A LPGA teaching professional?
Yeah, I had to give that a moment of thought, and it goes back to Renee Powell and my other person, Lori Griffey. And of course, everybody knows the name Renee Powell. And she's from Canton, right down the road from me in Cleveland. So interestingly enough, when I would be out on the golf course, people would think I was Renee because we have the same sort of general description, if you will. And so, it used to make me kind of laugh, but I also looked up to her because I knew who she was. And then when I went to a golf school down in Florida, it was the Ben Sutton Golf School, I think was the name of it. It was so many years ago. One of the pros there, his name was Lori Griffey. She was a PGA professional. And she lived in Cleveland during the winter, in Florida during, I got that backwards. Florida in the winter, Cleveland in the summer. Makes more sense, doesn't it?
Does make more sense.
But anyway, because she was from Cleveland, when she was home, she sort of took me under her wing. And, she was a white female, and she I'm saying was because I haven't seen her in so many years, but she's a PGA member. And she took me under her wing. She took me to my first PGA show. She would take me out, play with me, and help me with my game. And she was just such a good friend. And I said, man, if golf professionals are like this, she's a teaching professional. Look how wonderful she is to me. Maybe I could do that too. And it just stuck in the back of my head. It wasn't an instant decision, but the way she embraced me and sort of, took me by the hand and tutored me stuck with me.
So at that point, what was your career? Like, what were you doing? I read somewhere about some engineering and nuclear reactors. So if you could speak a little to that.
Yes, I was a machinist and I had gone to school for engineering. And as I was working that job and going to school, I will say it was a deep down gut feeling that I knew that wasn't me. And even though I loved the mathematics and I loved the machining and all the stuff that went with it, you know how you start something and you're like, no, I like it, but I don't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. And when people would ask me, I had a big conversation with people at the lunch table one day, and everybody was saying, oh, we'll retire from here. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to retire from this career. I know it. It was just, and I didn't know where I was going to go, but I knew that wasn't it.
I'd imagine, I've been a female in the golf industry for a while. I kind of understand how that goes, but what discrimination did you face, not only because of your gender, but also because of your race, and how did that affect you?
It affected me negatively and positively because one of the first golf professionals that my husband paid for lessons for us to have private lessons with, and he made the statement to me, or it was a question. He said, I don't know why you're trying so hard. You're never going to be a professional. And that is almost like a cold slap in the face, honestly, because here I'm paying you a whole bunch of money to teach me golf. And I had to actually think before I reacted, because my first thought was not very nice. So my answer was, I'm trying hard because I know I can do it better. And I left it at that. But that stuck in the back of my head because I never thought about being a professional. As an athlete, I had played sports growing up with my two brothers, and I was always good at sports. And so with the golf, as I was taking lessons, I'm struggling knowing that I could be better, but it actually kind of planted a seed as well. It took years for it to germinate and grow, but it stayed in the back of my head.
So in that regard, you had found this activity that just gotcha, that just captured you, and to be so, I would call that very disrespected in your attempt to kind of try to enjoy the game. Is that a common experience? How you obviously talked about it stuck with you. Have you any other instances of things like that? And if so, like, how common was that for you to experience, going through your career?
Going through my journey in golf, because I must say, career-wise, once I joined the LPGA, I have felt warmly embraced almost for the most part. But as I was going through my journey in golf, which included that lesson, I have so many instances of racism and it's so subtle that unless you're actually understand it, you won't even a lot of times realize that it's happening. And then other times there's the slap in the face kind of things. I can think of me being on a golf course. I'm the only Black person that I see here all day. I go into the pro shop. There's no one in the pro shop but me. I have a pocket full of money and cards and I want to buy something. And the attendant doesn't even say hello to me. But as soon as someone else comes in, oh, hi, how you doing? How can I help you? So I'm like, okay, you know what? I just don't think I'm going to spend my money here. That kind of thing. So negative things sort of stick with you And in my case, many of those things propelled me to want to become a professional so that I could be a person when that lady walked into the pro shop or onto the golf course, that I would treat them with respect when they came for their lesson, that I would welcome them and treat them the way they deserve to be treated. It's just a game after all.
Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think golf has such, the tendency to have that inherent attitude? And, I think we seem to be getting better, but what do you think, how has that attitude, I guess, permeated golf throughout the years, and why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, to be, just brutally honest with you, that attitude has existed in our culture for hundreds of years. And, we could go back and we could talk about the history that has gone along with, let's just say, other sports, with football and baseball. You talk about the Jackie Robinsons that have come through. And so there's stories connected with sport, but also with everything else in our life and our culture. And then golf is a little bit unique in the sense that there's property that is owned by people who own the golf courses, right? So they own the property and they can say, you can't come here and play. You can come here and work, but you can't come here and play. And then the other thing that golf did, and I can't speak to the other sports, but golf did have a Caucasian only clause that existed from roughly 1935 until 1961. And as long as that clause was in place and effective, a person could not join, and a person of color could not join the PGA, and the LPGA did not put that in their original clause. So there's a little history there. So with that type of background and the way golf is as opposed to a team sport, it's taken a bit more time.
What changes does golf need to make to be more inclusive across all demographics? And are we making progress? Are we getting better? Or do we still have a pretty long way to go?
Well, I mean, that's a big question because there's several answers. And the last part of it, I think that we do have a long way to go. However, we are making progress. We don't see it yet so much. When you turn on the TV and you look at a golf tournament, you don't see faces of color really. Black, I'll just say black faces, because we do see Asian faces and we see some Hispanic faces. But when it comes to Black people, not so much. When you look at the ladies tour, it's always been smaller than the men's tour, but you have Mariah out there. And of course we have to go back and we get Larry Suggs, Renee Powell. There's a few ladies out there like Shasta Avery Hart, Sadina Parks. I could go on and on with the list, but it's not a very long list. And the truth of the matter is, if you go back to Tiger Woods, when Tiger Woods came out on tour, there were more Black players on the men's tour when he came on the scene in 1997 than there are now. That's a problem. That tells you there's a problem, because it's not because Black people aren't physically capable, because we know that they are. But I think that the fight to get to where you have to be, with all the things that go with it, access, economic advantages, equipment, the cost of travel and tournaments and things like that. I mean, when you put it all together, I think that the African American community basically says, I can go do something else. I can go to college and I can have a good career doing something else.
From your perspective, and you're very much more in the grassroots of really growing the game in the way that the game needs to be grown. How do you go about trying to empower, young women of color specifically to say, hey, just because, things may not look this way right now doesn't mean you can't be part of that change in the future? How do you go about empowering those young women?
Well, I work for a foundation, the Women in Golf Foundation, and we have worked for a lot of years doing exactly that. And we feel successful in the sense that we have gotten people in the community, corporations, a lot of them that, I can run down the list, AT&T, and, down the list of corporations who have helped us and have helped us to get kids into tournaments, helped us to get kids equipment. Um, travel and, just things like that, college scholarships, all of those things, they all matter, but there needs to be more. And to take African-American people who are capable and who want to be in the business community, how do you take them to the higher levels? Because the higher levels is where there's really a problem. That's where you do not see us.
So in that note, same note, what made you want to go further and take it even further and get that Class A, that very, very valuable Class A? It's not very common either way. I don't know a lot of Class A professionals. So what kind of
right
from I want to teach to I want to go to that next level and get my Class A?
Well, yeah. And so that's a great question. I wanted to get my Class A because I felt like in order for other African-American women to look at golf in a different way, they needed to see somebody who was in it, who was doing it well, and see me as being somebody that they could be as well. When I first went to my first class, level 1, because there's different levels that you have to go through to get that Class A, Dr. Betsy Clark was there, who was the chief of our teaching division back then. And she welcomed me so warmly, I'll never forget it. And she said to me when we met, she said, we need you. We need you to be a model for women, young women in your community and girls, so that they could see, that golf could be something that you could do at a different level. And then the other piece that I wanted as a Class A, I wanted to learn enough to be really, really good and bring it back into my community so that I could help young women who came along in a really effective way.
That's incredible. And that's exactly what I think people don't understand about the golf industry. I think you see the LPGA, you see the PGA Tour, you see the PGA Tour champions, the senior tour, you see all these different tours and you think that's what golf is.
Right.
But that's incredible that you took that initiative to go, okay, this is going to be great. This is going to be something that's going to be great for myself, but I'm also going to, and my goal is to empower people around me and to use this to give other women a chance and other women a platform to,
Exactly.
and other people of color an opportunity to see somebody succeed. I think that's absolutely incredible that was your goal from the jump, because I don't think a lot of people consider that. I think they, it becomes very egocentric, and I love that was your goal from the jump, like that was your idea in the beginning.
Exactly, because, starting out golf at the age of 30, I'm sitting here, I've got 2 kids, a wonderful husband, a family. I'm not trying to go on tour. It didn't make any sense at all to me. However, it's such a wonderful game that I wished that I had known at a younger age. I wish that I had been introduced to it. So, I wanted to be involved in it because I saw how good it was. And that's why I chose the path that I chose. And I could thank so many women in the LPGA who mentored me and just helped me on my journey, because I couldn't have done it without them.
That's awesome. So to kind of go into more of your teaching experience, what's been your most, if you can qualify it, I know it's a loaded question, but what has been your most rewarding moment as an instructor, and what have been some of your challenges being an instructor?
There are plenty of challenges. The rewarding moments. I think about a day when I was out on the golf course with the junior clinics of the foundation, and I had a bunch of kids out there, and a cart drove up, and there was a young man on the cart who I had taught golf a decade ago, at least. More when I think about it. And he walked up to me, and he's, really tall, and he says, "Miss Oneda, how are you?" And I remembered him right away. And, we hugged, and he told me, because he was such a, I'm not going to say a bad kid, but he was a challenge. I'll put it that way. And he told me that he had graduated from college, he was married, and he was working for a really good company, and that his boss found out that he was a golfer, and it changed their relationship, and he was doing things in the company and just doing well in life, and that golf was a pivotal part of that. And those types of stories, and there are more stories like that, but those types of things really touch me right here, because back when I met him, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, this kid,
All been there. We've all been there.
Right. But to have him come back a dozen years later was such a wonderful story. It makes it all worth it.
Where do you see golf's inclusivity in 5 years or even 10 years from now?
Well, there are things starting to happen. I would love to see more African Americans. I won't say African Americans, because African Americans could be white, and I have nothing against white people. I love them. There's a bunch of them in my family. But I would like to see it more inclusive, where there's more Black people when you turn on the television, on the Golf Channel, and the game actually looks like America more. You know what I mean? So that, and it's not because of it being such a great way to make money so much or that, but it really is a wonderful game with the life skills that goes along with it. And we recruit kids to come and play golf, but we're always fighting basketball, baseball, soccer, football. We're fighting those sports that those kids can actually much easier go play. Their parents know a whole lot more about. It's less expensive and more accessible. Whereas we see golf as being more of a game that can open doors when it comes to careers, like the young man who came back and said how he knew that golf was making a difference for him in his career. So we see it as being something that has the wonderful life skills, teaches people all those great things that you hear from the first tee about pride, honesty, integrity, all the things that we want our kids to embrace as they're growing up, so that they can become life champions. So that's kind of what I would want to see, more of a model, so that when kids turn on TV, they can feel like, yeah, I could do that. It's no big deal. I can do it just like the other sports.
How can, I think you mentioned your foundation, I believe, Women in Golf, is that correct?
Women in Golf Foundation, yes.
How can, people like me, people like, just normal people try to support that foundation? What can we do? Can we donate, volunteer our time? How does that kind of work? And can you point us in a direction to start doing that?
Yes, honey, you can do all of that. So you go to womeningolffoundation.org, and we do have a lot of initiatives going on. We have hosted the Women's Collegiate Championship for 26 years, and it is a national championship for the historically Black colleges and universities girls teams. We weren't able to do it last year, but we are hot on the trail to get it done this year, and we're going to do it in April. And so when you say, can you volunteer? Absolutely, we need volunteers. Can you donate? Yes. And of course, we have our junior program in the summer, which we couldn't do because our city course where we hosted it was closed for so long. And we just didn't know how to get the kids back. So, and then we do our college prep courses. So we take care of juniors from little kids to the middle kids and through college, and help the collegiates with internships and things as they're going through that process. So it's a big foundation, a lot of work that we do. And like I said, you can go to womeningolffoundation.org and connect. And we would love to have any help that we can get.
There's a couple fun questions, a couple details of your life that I feel like people need to know about. So you spent some time playing in the in WFL as a football player for the Cleveland Brewers.
Yes.
What was that like? I mean, to be a golfer, to be an engineering, you know, have an engineering degree, and then to play football. Like, girl, what did you not do?
Yeah, well, there's a list there as well. But the football was fun. And it was something that my husband saw in the newspaper one day, and he says, why don't you go try out? Well, I'm a tomboy. Yeah, sure, why not? So I go and I try out, and they're like, yeah, sure, you're pretty fast. Got pretty good hands. Because I played, all the sports with my brothers growing up. And it wasn't like I was a great professional football player because I got pregnant. Well, with the guys, they don't have to deal with that. So consequently, my career was short, but it was fun.
Got to know your dream foursome, and if you could play anybody head-to-head in match play, who would you take on?
Man, that is such a good question. And of all your questions, that's the one I pondered the most. I kid you not. So the dream foursome, I had to think about that because I thought about it different ways. I said, well, I'd love to play and have Jesus in the foursome. Because who is more profound than him, right? And it wouldn't matter how great he played or how bad he beat me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Just to, be able to talk to him. And then my other person was Martin Luther King. I always looked up to him just because he knew his fight was a tough one, but he continued it anyway. And there's two people who lost their lives to make hopefully life better for the next generations, right? Mm-hmm. And then this is kind of out there. And then the other one would be Anne Gregory. Anne Gregory was a great Black golfer here in the US. And she started playing golf because her husband went in the service and she needed something to do. And she was so good at it that the Chicago Women's Golf Club joined the USGA so that she could play in US Open tournaments. And I talked to some of our founders, Peggy Kirkbell, people like that, who played with Anne Gregory, and they said she was really, really good. Mm-hmm. So I would love to play with her as well.
So is there a Renee Powell, Oneda Castillo head-to-head matchup that's going to happen at some point?
Yes, that's my match play person.
Okay.
Yes. I'd love to play with Renee, and I know she doesn't play very much anymore, and neither do I, for that matter. In my mind, I'm still great, but my body is like, girl, you haven't practiced that shot in so long. But anyways, I'd love to play match play with Renee. She's one of my true sheroes.
So last question. Why golf? What do you want people to know about this sport? Why should people pick up clubs? Why should you get involved?
It's just a wonderful game for so many reasons, Sarah. It's the game that you can play with your grandchildren, because I do, and I love it. It's the game that I have played in all 50 states in the Union and 4 continents. And so, yes, I got to play a couple more continents. So, yeah. I'm trying to win a ticket to Australia. But anyways, so you get to meet so many different people and see the beauty of the earth, as you're going about the difference between a Pebble Beach, let's just say, and Pinehurst, North Carolina. To me, Pinehurst is just as beautiful as Pebble Beach, but they're just so different, right? And then everything in between. And then there's Hawaii and there's Alaska, and they're all so extremely beautiful. But the thing that I love about it most is, and I say this to people all the time, is the people prize. The people prize. Had it not been for golf, I would not have met so many wonderful, wonderful people that are my friends for life. Had it not been for golf, I wouldn't have done the travel. And then, of course, how humbling of a sport it is. And I think that it does wonderful things for youth as they're growing up. And to be honest, I don't know what's a better family game. So that's why golf.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm super excited to have you as our Golf Thursday feature this week, and I really celebrate you. I think what you're doing is super incredible and super important, and I hope that we can get some traction over to your foundation as a result
That would be
of this.
nice.
So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You were great. Thanks for having me.